They have no navy, it's been knocked out. President Trump's words on March 3rd weren't an exaggeration. In just 48 hours, Iran's entire naval fleet in the Gulf of Oman was eliminated. 11 warships, multiple submarines, gone. This isn't just a military setback, this is a complete collapse of a naval strategy Iran spent decades building after their last humiliation in 1988. The numbers are staggering. The strategic implications are even bigger. And what we're about to break down shows exactly how the U.S. shattered Iran's naval doctrine so completely that Tehran never saw it coming. Here's the full tactical breakdown. Let's start with what U.S. Central Command posted on X. 2 days ago, the Iranian regime had 11 ships in the Gulf of Oman. Today, they have 0. Not damaged, not retreating, 0. The satellite imagery confirms everything. The Makran, Iran's first forward base ship, took multiple hits while moored at Bandar Abbas. This 120,000-ton converted oil tanker was one of the largest vessels in the Middle East. Photos show fires across its berth and thick smoke pouring from the central section. A Jamaran-class corvette stationed at Chabahar also went down. These ships carry anti-ship missiles, surface-to-air systems, and torpedoes. They were supposed to be the backbone of Iran's defensive strategy. At least one is now burning at Tomahawk Naval Base. Planet Labs satellite imagery reveals the full scale. The Bandar Abbas region, where 11 warships were docked as recently as February 22nd, is now blanketed in thick black smoke. But the biggest loss? The IRS Shahid Bagheri. This converted commercial vessel was Iran's closest equivalent to an aircraft carrier. It served as a drone mothership, launching attacks against U.S. bases and Gulf targets from the moment operations began. It could also launch and retrieve helicopters, making it a multi-role threat platform. Now it's at the bottom of the Gulf of Oman. Some analysts are calling it the first aircraft carrier sunk since World War II. That might be a stretch compared to actual U.S. carriers, but for Iran, this loss is catastrophic, and it gets worse. The Telegraph reports that U.S. forces didn't just target ships. They mostly destroyed the headquarters of the Iranian naval fleet at Bandar Abbas. Command and control. Gone. Then Israel struck. Admiral Ali Shamkhani of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was eliminated in an airstrike. So in 48 hours, Iran lost its entire Gulf of Oman fleet, its primary naval headquarters, and one of its top admirals. This isn't just operationally bad, this is historically unprecedented. And for older Iranian military leaders, this has to feel like déjà vu, because Iran has been here before. April 18, 1988, Operation Praying Mantis. The context. Throughout the late 70s and 80s, Iran repeatedly targeted the U.S. The 1979 hostage crisis, the failed Desert One rescue that cost 8 American lives, the 1983 Beirut bombing that ended 241 Marines and sailors, the 1987 USS Stark attack. Then came Praying Mantis. In a matter of hours, the U.S. destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms, a missile boat, 2 frigates, and 3 armed speedboats. Half of Iran's operational navy was crippled in one day. It was the worst blow to a navy dating back to the First Persian Empire over 2,500 years ago. Note the word was. What just happened makes Operation Praying Mantis look minor by comparison. But here's the critical difference. After 1988, Iran completely rewrote its naval doctrine, specifically to prevent another Praying Mantis. They built an entire strategy around asymmetric warfare, swarms of fast attack boats, land-based anti-ship missiles, submarines positioned for ambushes. The Iranian military spent 35 years preparing for the next American attack, and none of it worked.
Iran's post-1988 strategy was actually clever on paper. Knowing they couldn't match U.S. firepower directly, they developed a layered defense. Fast attack boats would dart in and out, delivering quick strikes. Submarines would launch torpedo ambushes. Land-based missiles would rain down on anything entering the Strait of Hormuz. The plan assumed the U.S. would engage in ship-to-ship combat in confined waters. Iran's smaller, more maneuverable vessels would have the advantage in those tight spaces. But by 2026, that doctrine was obsolete before the first shot was fired. Why? Because the U.S. never played Iran's game. Persistent drone coverage meant the U.S. knew exactly where every Iranian vessel was positioned at all times. Iranian warships couldn't get close to American forces because surveillance technology had advanced light years beyond what Iran prepared for. Iran brought a 1990s strategy to a 2026 fight. The result? Complete tactical failure. Here's where Iran's planning completely collapsed. The U.S. strategy was devastatingly simple. Destroy Iran's fleet using Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from so far away that Iranian ships never left port. Tomahawks have a standoff range exceeding 1,600 kilometers, roughly 1,000 miles. The warships launching them never came within range of Iranian defenses. The Iris Makran demonstrates this perfectly. Tomahawks struck the ship in rapid succession from hundreds of miles away. Whatever defensive systems Iran had installed never had a chance to respond. Those missiles were likely launched from Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers, the exact ships Iran expected to engage with fast attack boats up close. Iran was waiting for American warships to arrive. What they got was a missile barrage from platforms they never even saw. Then came the cleanup phase. Once Iranian ships were crippled and in disarray, F-35s moved in with precision JDAM bombs for final strikes. This two-phase approach was brilliant. Subvert Iranian expectations with long-range strikes, then close in for precision work when defenses are already shattered. This wasn't a naval battle. It was a systematic demolition of a force designed to counter threats the U.S. never intended to present.
But here's what most analysis is missing. This operation wasn't primarily about destroying Iran's military capability. Dr. Andreas Bohm from Switzerland's University of St. Gallen puts it bluntly. If you compare their navy with Donald Trump's big, beautiful armada, it's more like a dwarf. Iran's navy was never a genuine threat to U.S. forces. Their equipment is outdated, weakened by sanctions. Their aircraft are mostly Shah-era U.S.-built planes that are decades old. So what was this really about? The Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway is one of the world's most critical transit routes. About 20% of all global crude oil shipments pass through it. China receives 45.7% of its oil through the strait. Even the Americas get 12.5% of their oil supply via this passage. It's a multi-billion-dollar choke point, and Iran was trying to shut it down. On March 2nd, Ibrahim Bagheri, senior advisor to the IRGC commander-in-chief, declared, "The strait is closed. If anyone tries to pass, the heroes of the Revolutionary Guard and the regular Navy will set those ships ablaze." Iran claimed they'd attack oil pipelines and drive oil prices to $200 per barrel. This wasn't empty posturing. Total transits through the strait dropped about 80%. Insurance prices skyrocketed. Companies stopped sending ships through. This was Iran's only real leverage in the conflict. By eliminating Iran's naval assets, the U.S. removed that leverage completely. Of course, Iran's state media tells a different story. They claimed they unleashed a hailstorm of ballistic missiles against the USS Abraham Lincoln. The U.S. quickly debunked this by releasing photos of the carrier fully operational. Iran also launched approximately 400 missiles and 1,000 drones at Gulf states, Qatar, Jordan, the UAE. Sounds impressive until you compare it to what Iran launched after Operation Midnight Hammer in summer 2025, when the US and Israel targeted nuclear infrastructure. The current numbers are significantly lower. This looks like the final gasps of a regime trying to project strength while everything crumbles. Iran's carefully constructed naval doctrine didn't just fail, it was so fundamentally flawed that it couldn't adapt when the US changed one element of expected strategy. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to reporters on March 2nd with a clear message. The hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. What we've seen so far was about eliminating the immediate threat. Now fronts are opening across the Middle East as Iranian proxies like the Houthis escalate attacks. But for Iran's navy, the damage is already irreversible. A fleet that was supposed to control the Strait of Hormuz and defend Iranian waters lasted 48 hours against modern American firepower. 35 years of doctrine development, decades of preparation, billions invested in asymmetric warfare capabilities, all neutralized in 2 days. And there's one person watching all of this with particular concern: Vladimir Putin. The collapse of Iran's regime has serious implications for Russia. Moscow has relied on Tehran as a strategic partner and regional proxy. Watching Iran's military capabilities evaporate in 48 hours sends a clear message about what modern American military power can accomplish when fully deployed. For Putin, already dealing with his own strategic challenges, Iran's naval disaster is a preview of what coordinated Western military action looks like in 2026. 11 warships destroyed, command headquarters devastated, a top admiral eliminated, the Strait of Hormuz reopening. 48 hours that dismantled decades of Iranian naval strategy. This is what happens when outdated doctrine meets cutting-edge warfare. The question now isn't whether Iran's navy can recover, it's what comes next as the US promises the hardest hits are still ahead.